Segments from Life in the Arts can now be viewed on demand on YouTube.com. Just go to YouTube.com, add /longtimers, and that will take you to our YouTube channel. Welcome to another edition of Life in the Arts Classic Light, the art enrichment program featuring art lessons, virtual field trips, student films, and performing artists. Life in the Arts is a program that your entire family can participate in and enjoy. On today's broadcast, Stencils with scintillating Sandra Still. Reproduce your graphic designs. Learn how. Stencils with Sandra Still. Plus, 2 award-winning films by Vince Giamanco. Now, which one is Vince? Oh, the guy on the end, that's right. Life in the Arts is beginning to enrich your lives with art. Now.
Hi, my name is Sandra Still, and today we're going to be talking about stencils. A stencil is basically a template in order to be able to apply a paint and to a surface, and what we're going to do is put it on construction paper today. And some of the things that you'll need, just basic supplies, would be manila paper or newsprint. That's so you can work on your design before you apply it to the stencil. Stencil paper. Stencil paper is just a little bit stiffer, and it has a surface to it that'll help resist the paint. Let's see what else. Then you'll need sponges, and although when you go to a store and you ask for a stencil brush, they'll give you one of these. I've never used one of these, or actually I have used it, but I don't like the way it works. So I have found that cosmetic sponges work the best, and you can find those at Long's or any kind of store that has cosmetic supplies. And it's because they have a really fine surface. You can use other sponges, kitchen sponges as well, and whatever surface that you use will be applied to your paper. Make that very interesting. And then, of course, you need paint. I'm going to just use tempera paint today, and temperas work really well because they're thicker. Watercolor paints would be too thin. And you can use acrylic paints too, but they tend to be more expensive. So let's get started. One of the first things you'll do is work with your manila, and we're going to start with a really simple method. Fold your paper in half, and then we're going to just draw a really simple design. And the thing to remember is to keep your design at least half an inch to an inch from each of the edges. That way when you tamp down with your sponge, which you'll find out later, you won't be going over onto the top part of the paper. And then just draw real simple. I'm going to do something abstract today. That's just what I feel like doing. And remember to try to use as much of the paper and keep the lines pretty big and bold. The more detail, the harder it is to do. And then you're going to cut your design out. And this is really a way of practicing to see that you like what you've done. So you don't have to follow your lines exactly. Some of the samples that you're seeing in the background are flowers or butterflies. You can do those kinds of things too. Okay, I've got a pattern. Looks like a pelvic bone. And this is a chance to see if you like your design or not, since it's on the manila. If you don't like it, you can try another one and keep working until you get something that you really like and want to work with. I'll go ahead and play with this and see what we do. Now we're going to transfer this design onto the stencil paper. So I need to fold it just the same way as I folded the manila or newsprint. take your template and the manila and put it over on top of the stencil paper. And this is where paper clips can be really handy to help secure the pattern so it doesn't move while you're transferring it. Okay, so again, I'm going to take my pencil and transfer the design from the manila onto the stencil paper. Okay, I can take off the paper clips and remove the manila. Now we've got the pattern transferred onto the stencil paper. You know, one of the tricks I found in cutting is if you keep your scissors going in the same direction and just move the paper, it makes it a lot easier. When you try to move your scissors, it gets harder. So you always have your scissors pointing in the same direction. And then just move the paper. Okay, now we have a stencil. It's kind of an odd-shaped thing. And we're going to transfer this to a construction paper. And what do I feel like? Well, since it looks like a pelvic bone, I'm going to put it on black. And you'll notice that this is standard 12 by 9 inch construction paper, and this is exactly half that size. So I'm going to fold this in half. This is a way that you can make cards. Mother's Day is coming up, so you might think of a way of making a Mother's Day card, or birthday cards, or Valentine's Day cards. Now this is the tricky part, is how do you keep the stencil from moving while you're applying the paint? This is the trickiest part. And there's a couple of different ways. One is to masking tape it down. Another is to use paper clips. And I think that's just what I'll do. I'll just use the paper clips and see how that works. The stencil paper is to keep the paint from going underneath. That's how the design is applied. So you need to make sure that they're all flat as possible. Now there's also something else that they call stencil stick. And I've tried using this also, but it leaves a residue on the paper, and I didn't like that. There's one I was working on yesterday, and the stencil stick, the advantage of it is that it really does hold down everything really well, but then the disadvantage is it leaves a little bit of a residue. But you know what? I might try that for this piece, otherwise it's going to get in the way. Carefully. Okay. You can see how that makes a nice firm hold, and I won't worry about the paint going underneath. But that might be a luxury in the classroom. Whoa. Okay, we take our paint. And it doesn't take a whole lot of paint to do these, and you can always apply more. So, get it off the fingers. Okay, this is the fun part. When you're putting your paint onto the cosmetic sponges, you don't need a whole lot of it, so you just keep tamping it up and down until the whole surface is covered and it's not big and globby. We don't want big globby spots. And then the most important thing is to go up and down. If you start to brush, it'll go underneath the stencil paper, and then your pattern will not be smooth. So you just go up and down. And you can see that it has, you can get some of the surface texture of the sponge. If you use a kitchen sponge, then you'll even have more of those air holes, which are kind of fun. It provides a neat texture. And you can see from some of the samples that they've used that as part of the design. I'm just going all the way around the edges. Up and down. So you can see why stencil paper is used, because it has that oily surface on it. If I were using another kind of paper, it would absorb the paint, which would make it less resistant. Okay. Now we have to let it dry a little bit, because if I pick it up now, it's possible that the paint will smear, but it looks like it's drying pretty fast in here with all these lights. Let's see. And another thing you can do, just for fun, and I just want to demonstrate it, so you know, you don't always have to stick. You can add another color if you want. Make it a 2-color. And you use a different sponge, of course, because the other one has the white on it. I want to put this around the edge, maybe. Oops. Okay, well, it may not be the most beautiful stencil in the world, but you get the idea. Okay. So, and it looks like it's pretty dry. It doesn't have to be completely dry, but you need to remember when you're lifting up the stencil, it has to come straight up so it doesn't smear. And there, you have a very odd design. But you can see how simple it is. That's what makes it so much fun. Now, another way of doing that, so I just did one central piece, one pattern on there, is to move it around. You can use the same stencil and then do, as you've seen in some of the other samples, of a random placement. Now, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that with this one because this stencil is wet, and it still has dampness on it, and if I come in with a different color, it'll smear onto the edges. But when the stencil is cleaned and dried, I would be able to do that. So maybe later if there's more time at the end. And another way of doing it is taking that same stencil and then repeating it or rotating it. There's another sample of a tulip that shows that if you start with one and you can move it on the sides, and you'll get it at a like a star shape. So there's many ways once you've made one stencil that you can apply it to a piece of paper. Let's see. I wanted to try another technique for those who have access to stencil. This particular pattern is you're always working on the fold and you're cutting on a fold, which is a really simple method. To get some other kinds of patterns, you really can't do that unless you have a way of creating the space internally on the piece of paper. So I have a little stencil knife. And some of you may have access to stencil knives or X-Acto blades. On the other hand, you may not want to have a classroom full of stencil blades. So you can create a pattern. Again, I'm just going to go random here. See if it works. And this way I'm freed from working on the fold. I don't know if that's going to work. You know what? That's not going to work on this surface. It'll go straight to a stencil paper. Oh, that works. Yeah, it's much better. Yeah, so that way you can make patterns that are not limited to being on the fold. Although working on a fold pattern there's many, many things that you can do. This just frees up the possibilities. No. I'm making funny patterns today. Okay. So again, let's try doing something on a different colored paper. How about yellow? Now, one of the things about being an artist that you've probably noticed before is that you always end up with paint on your hands. And I figure that's a good sign. If you have colored fingers and colored fingernails, it shows that you've been playing with paints and having a good time. Okay, what color should I use this time? Orange on yellow? Or, you know what I could do is mix the colors as they go down. Let's try that. I'm going to have the whole color palette out here in a minute. So you don't have to just stay with one color inside the stencil. Another thing you notice is that the distances between the stencil places are pretty wide, and you can see that the reason they need to be wide is if they were really, really close and tiny, then the sponge would go into the other areas. You can just see it. I just almost went into the other circle. So it's a good reason for keeping a pretty big, broad design. So in this case, it's really good to work big. Okay. Oh, careful. Okay, another odd pattern. Now, if I wanted to repeat or put it in another way, I could do that, but I have to wait until it's dry, and this would be clean. But you can see how you can just keep working that same stencil in many different ways. Okay. So there's another odd. That's sort of reminiscent of Munch's The Scream. Actually, oh, over there. So what we've done today is put patterns onto construction paper, but I wanted you to know that you're not limited to construction paper. Actually, the earliest stencils in this country were on walls and on floors. People couldn't afford wallpaper or carpets, and so they would make stencils and apply the patterns that way. Walls, I've seen people put stencils on walls and on furniture and fabrics. So I'm going to show you another one I did not too long ago. Cut my pattern out of the manila, and I put it onto paper first to see what it looked like, and I kind of like it. And those of you who know me know I have a particular penchant for carrots. And then I put it onto a t-shirt. Now for this you need a different kind of paint, but you can figure that out along the way. Just like if you were to put stencils on walls, you'd need a special kind of paint, or put the stencil on a t-shirt, you'd need a fabric paint. But it's all possible. It's all out there. Here's another one I did recently. Can you read that? My sister's turning 40. So it says, denial, anger, bargain, accept, 40. She won't see this, though, because she lives in Maine. And here's another stencil sample I have. This one's from Japan. And they put them on the back of their kimonos. So that's a sample of a beautiful stencil. A little more complicated technique, but it's the same idea. And that same idea that we've been working with is a surface, whether it's paper, fabric, wall, or floor, then the stencil, that's the template, and then the paint. On top of that, that would be specific. And just so some of you, if you can make your own stencils, but there's a lot of stencils that are out there. Here's a couple here's a birthday party stencil, cakes and balloons and sorts of fun things. And here's just the alphabet stencil that you can use. And these books, these are wonderful little books that you can pick up at most craft stores for like $1 a piece. And they have the stencils that are already in them. Here's an Egypt one, kind of like this one. There's a sarcophagus. Whose head is that? Oops, I'm going the wrong way, aren't I? Yeah, so, and then I was recently at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and there I found starcraft, spaceships, airplanes, just all sorts of wonderful variety of. So you don't have to make your own stencil. You can find them out there or get ideas from these to make your own. And then I did a search yesterday on the web. If you have access to a computer, do a search on stencils. There were a gazillion different sites out there with all sorts of ideas, ordering materials. You can get it all online as well. So I hope that's given you some ideas. Here's a real simple book that I found on stencils with patterns. Just basically everything we've just done today, but enhancing and trying new and different methods. But it's all basically the same thing, applying a paint through a stencil or a template. So I hope you have fun. Thanks.
My brother said that I was rotten to the core. I was the youngest child, so I got by with more. I guess she was tired by the time I came along. She'd laugh until she cried I could do no wrong. She would always save me because I was her baby. I worked a factory in Ohio, a shrimp boat in the bayou. I drove a truck in Birmingham, turned 21 in Cincinnati. I called home to Mom and Daddy. I said, your boy is now a man. She said, I don't care if you're 80. You'll always be my baby. I got a call in Alabama, said come on home to Louisiana and come as fast as you can fly, 'cause your mama really needs you and says she's gotta see you, and she might not make it through the night. The whole way I drove 80 so she could see her baby. She looked like she was sleeping, and my family had been weeping by the time that I got to her side. And I knew that she'd been taken, and my heart, it was breaking. I never got to say goodbye. I softly kissed that lady and cried just like a baby.
Boy in the Monterey Bay Aquarium, all by himself in the middle of the night. Why did a major consumer electronics manufacturer spend $500,000 to produce this beautiful commercial that no one has ever seen? But you'll see it, and you'll find out why and how next time on Life in the Arts.